songs too.
So my point is that there's a lot of people out there. I would say the majority of people believe in another side.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Whether religiously or karma or whatever you want to call it. People have a tendency to believe and not believe at the same time, which we're polarized creatures. We're not individual entities.
Mm-hmm.
Self, which shows up when isolated. When you're isolated, isolation, confinement. People get crazy, and we're separated. We're separated also by our brains. Our brains are in two hemispheres, not one. So there's a lot going on that's not physical.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Much more than is physical.
Right.
I'd like to ask you, Donya, we talked a little about animals earlier. I'd like to ask you, when did you start talking to animals in the gray space, and could you tell us a little about what the gray space is? Sure.
Well, a couple of years after I started talking to Ben, I'd wake up and have these scared feelings, and he told me that since I'm one of those people who can't even go to the shopping mall without picking up other people's emotions, he said, you probably got a crowd around you that you can't see, and you're picking up their emotions. And he advised me to just ask who they are, keep my pen and paper handy, and write down what they tell me. So that's what started my wake-up pages. And I talked to a lot of different people who had a lot of different reasons why they didn't feel they could move on to the timeless, spaceless place. And that's how Ben calls your ultimate destination, the TSP. And so
timeless, spaceless, okay.
Timeless, yeah, because there's no time and there's no space there. And he also goes on to add that that's where all the infinite possibilities happen at once. Well, anyway, eventually, by and by, after I'd written notebooks full of these stories about, people who are just stuck, and that nobody's punishing them. They're not imprisoned. They're not roaming around, haunting the earth. They're just the way you are when you can't make up your mind. Should I go or should I stay? Should I keep this job or quit? Should I move to Minneapolis or should I stay in St. Paul? It's that stuck place, which isn't really a place at all. And it is largely caused by someone not being able to let go of something, like a relationship or a job that they have to finish, or they need to apologize for something, or they need revenge for something. And so, I'd get one of these people, and then I'd call Ben, and he'd give them a little counseling and help them to make up their mind to move on. And eventually, I remember, it was my dog, Maggie. I got a call from her. It wasn't one of my wake-up visits. It was just during the day. And I felt this weird feeling, and I asked Ben what was going on, and he said, it's Maggie. So I wrote down what she was saying to me. She just wanted to let me know everything was fine, and she hoped she could come back and meet my dog again sometime. And, she thought I was a good person, and she was happy being my dog when she was here. And actually that made me feel very good, because I sometimes really doubted I was as good of a dog person as I should have been. But what happened?
Go ahead. I hear a caller asking a question.
Okay, well, anyway, what happened after that was I asked Ben, how could I be communicating with Maggie? She's a dog. She doesn't She doesn't speak with words. And Ben said, she's talking to you the same way I do, with thoughts. People, disembodied people and disembodied animals talk with thoughts. And people like me hear the thoughts and write them down. And we actually don't even realize we're translating into words. But that's what we're doing. Well, once I realized I could communicate with Maggie, then all of a sudden all sorts of animals started joining my wake up calls. And it wasn't really that much different from talking to people. You just have to kind of adjust your frequency, like you're tuning a radio.
Donya, and speaking of those animals, and earlier you mentioned getting stuck, can we cause our pets to get stuck?
Yeah. It's not, doesn't happen very often. The only animals that I know of that I've encountered that do get stuck are stuck because of their relationship with human beings. We had one cat named Elliot who couldn't cross over because his people just kept crying and crying and crying, and they didn't want to go on living without him, and he felt so bad. And so finally I got hold of Ben, and Ben explained to him that one of the jobs of human beings is to learn how to deal with loss and to get on with their lives. And, he explained that Elliot did a good job, and, Elliot should move on and let the people, do their grieving and get over it. But it takes a lot, really, to keep an animal stuck, from emotional attachment. More likely, it's going to be something like, we've all heard the stories of the dogs waiting at the train station. There's a lot of those. Greyfriars, Bobby, Hachiku or something like that. Anyway, the dog waits at the station and the master doesn't come home. He had a stroke or a heart attack or something while he was out of town. The dog waits and waits and waits. Well, dogs do that after they die too. And I've gotten a couple of them who just refuse to budge from the spot where they're waiting. One of them, he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't even let Ben take him to the timeless, spaceless place. He had to go get this dog's master and bring him so that Lad could see him. That was his name, Lad. And then Lad's master took him home to the TSP. But dogs can be very stubborn. They're so faithful, and when they are waiting for what they expect, and especially if there's an element of loyalty involved, they're hard to shake. But yeah, that's what they do.
We have
I'm trying to think of other situations. Go ahead.
We have someone in the chat room, Donya, a Reverend Kenneth R., who says, I believe in the afterlife and I believe there is a heaven. Do you think that probably many people's term for heaven is a reference to the timeless, spaceless space?
I think that's possible. I mean, a lot of people have a very narrow concept of heaven. It's exclusively for Christians, and, you wear these outfits, with the long robe, and, if you get your wings, then you get to wear those. But the thing is, I think an awful lot of people don't really have that kind of an understanding of heaven. They just don't have a better word for it. They're sure there's an afterlife, and they're hoping it's good, and so the best they can come up with for terminology is heaven. But I like Ben's term, the timeless, spaceless place, because it includes heaven, and it includes all sorts of other possibilities as well. And in fact, as he says, the possibilities are infinite. So, you can kind of go there and pretty much create the environment you want.
Speaking of animals again, Donya, do animals reincarnate as people and vice versa? And is being incarnated as a lower life form a type of punishment or karmic payback? We here in the West, we're really stuck in this sort of dualism
like where we think everything has to be bad or good, right or wrong, high or low. And so a lot of people who have kind of given up on heaven because of that that dissonance I referred to earlier, they move on and they get interested in karma and other religions and their approach to the afterlife, and yet it's still kind of about punishment or about hierarchy or about being deserving or not deserving. And one of the things that a lot of people are real convinced of is either A, that animals don't have souls at all, or B, that they're different from human souls, and that there's no way a human could incarnate as an animal or an animal as a human. Or they go the route that if you do something terrible in this life, you'll reincarnate as a lower species. And Ben doesn't buy any of that. For one thing, he's absolutely adamant that animals do have souls. He had this conversation with one of my wake-up people called Clark, and Clark wanted to go where his dogs are. He said that he knew that dogs didn't go to heaven because his teachers told him that dogs don't have souls. And he said, well, he wanted to go where his dogs are. And so Ben had a little conversation with him, and finally he said, can a dog love you? And Clark, yeah, of course. And Ben said, well, isn't that what it means to have a soul? And at that point, Clark was convinced that, his dogs were where they needed to be, and he was going to go there with them.
Wow, that is incredible. Can you tell us why people choose to reincarnate as animals?
Well, we got one of mine was a little pig. She was a pot-bellied pig, and she was a pet, and she loved her people. And it turns out that she was on vacation. She had, everybody has a soul team. Some people call them soul groups, but basically we have a team that we incarnate with and we work on projects with. Well, her team decided she was ready for a vacation, so they set her up as a pampered pet. Some people, their life is so intellectual and so intense and so enclosed that they want to get out and run, and so they might incarnate as a gazelle or a lion and enjoy the thrill of the chase. And since they don't take death nearly as seriously as we do, going out and spending a few years as either a predator or a prey or both, that could be a lot of fun. That could be exciting. Give you a break from being an accountant all day.
This is Wendy. Could I add to that comment, Donya?
Hi, Wendy. How are you? Good to hear from you.
Yes, please do.
I think we incarnate for the experiences, so that's why it makes sense to me that anything is possible because we've got free will. And in my past life regression sessions, I definitely have worked with clients who have found lives and experiences as something other than human. So I think anything is possible.
Well, one of the examples Ben gave is there are people who have been soldiers, for example. Maybe they were killed in battle, and they want to go back and be with their outfit and maybe protect some of their guys or finish something. And so they will incarnate as a German Shepherd and become a military dog.
Be a war
maybe
dog.
Somebody
yes.
knows. Yeah. Maybe somebody knows somebody who's blind and needs some help, so they incarnate as a guide dog. There's all sorts of ways that animals can be of service without having to commit to a full human lifetime.
Yeah, that makes great sense. I think it's so moving because they just they love us so much, and they're just willing to play that role. And they also teach us unconditional love. I mean, that's so much of what dogs and cats and horses and other animals do for us. They just model that so beautifully.
And I think sometimes, somebody's had a rich, full life and maybe really wants to spend a little more time with a friend or a spouse or a child that he's had to leave too soon, they'll go back and be their cat.
Absolutely. I think
Donya,
they can also be.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Rich. Go ahead. I think they can also be inspiration. My eldest daughter wants to become a veterinarian, and that came up for her because her rabbit died, and it was very unexpected, and just seemed very healthy and was fairly young, 4 or 5 years old. So it was just really a surprise. And I have an animal communicator friend, and I asked her 6 months or a year later, what was that all about? Was there any purpose to that? And she tuned in and spoke with the rabbit, and the rabbit said, I came in to inspire her to be a vet because she just then was very, very interested in learning, well, why did that happen, and could it have been prevented, and could there have been a different outcome? And the rabbit went on to say that he didn't particularly like being a rabbit, but he was willing to do it for a couple years to be with her and to inspire her and help get her on her life path, and that he was now much happier as a dog.
Oh, cool. I'd rather be a dog too, really. But yeah, I totally think that that's all part of the planning process. That it's not like there are some wretched creatures that never get to do anything except be mice, and some that get to compose symphonies. I think, according to Ben, it's the soul thing. It's like we're not exclusive, finite bits of soul. We actually can combine in various ways. And he talks about the giant Slurpee machine, where all the icy flavors come out of the machine, and they could be in different containers and different mixtures, and that's kind of one of his little metaphors for what it's like being a soul and having a body.
I like that analogy.
Go.
Donya, tell us, what is the soul team?
Oh, okay. Well, everybody, who talks about souls and afterlife stuff, they talk about soul groups. And fading out here. Okay, we reincarnate in groups, and you have a bunch of people, a bunch of souls that you work with, and we generally think about, why am I incarnating in this situation? Why am I doing this? Why me? Why am I doing? What was I thinking? Well, what it's really about is that we're part of projects. Things happen, and they need people to come and participate. Ben's favorite example is the music of the 1960s and 70s. He showed me a picture of all of these rock stars parachuting out of airplanes down to the earth to bring this high energy music that he says was actually helping to compensate for the very bad negative energy that was being generated by the Vietnam War. And so all of these people with their strange hair and their strange sounds and their strange accent, this was a project. This was planned to help balance the earth so that it wouldn't be completely taken over by negativity.